Downloadable content has always gotten a bad rap. After you've already spent your hard-earned dollars on a video game, you're then expected to fork out even more cash to get your hands on non-compulsory content. Now, you obviously don't have to buy the DLC, but when the best weapons and playable characters are stuck behind a paywall, it's hard not to get tempted. But accessing the additional material isn't always easy. Even when the DLC is free, it's not worth it if the means to unlock it is exhausting. Downloading apps and setting up online accounts to use DLC can be so stressful you would have preferred paying for it the old-fashioned way. But even if payment is an option, that doesn't necessarily make it easier. If you were thinking about purchasing any of the following DLCs, you might want to think again. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are the 8 dumbest things we did to unlock video game DLC. Number 8. Link with Mortal Kombat Mobile. Mortal Kombat 11. Almost every unlockable in Mortal Kombat 11 can be obtained for the right price. If you can't be bothered to grind religiously to obtain secret costumes, you can pay for them. If you want to play as the Terminator, Rambo, or the Joker, you better get your wallet ready. If you want to fight as Christopher Lambert's version of Raiden from the live-action adaptation of Mortal Kombat, you're gonna have to part with a few dollary-doos. But there's one DLC you can unlock without spending a dime. For this hidden feature, you need to download Mortal Kombat Mobile. You then have to complete the tutorial, create a personal file, go to settings, and then tap console link to get a code. After that, you opened MK11's options menu and select link to mobile to enter the code. Once that's all done, you can claim your prize. What do you get? The Kronika announcer voice. Once selected, MK11's overarching villain will make all the announcements in the game. This was, well, dumb. Not just because the convoluted means to unlock it, but because everybody hates Kronika. Also, why would you want to go through that entire rigmarole when you can get Johnny Cage as an announcer for free, who's way better? Cage's announcements are way more entertaining since he refers to the combatants by names like Stock Villain, Future Ex-Wife, and Kiki Longstockings. Number 7. Pre-order for the tiniest DLC, Tomb Raider 2013. One cheap tactic to incentivize gamers to purchase DLC is to make it a pre-order bonus. If you don't buy the game before the release date, you can't access the extra content. This is a cheap tactic since there are plenty of people who won't buy a game until they see if it's any good. But if you're a fan of the game and you know you're gonna miss out on some content by not buying it ahead of time, it can certainly be tempting. And that's just especially annoying when it turns out that said DLC was not worth it. Sadly, those who pre-ordered 2013's Tomb Raider learned this the hard way after playing the additional mission, Tomb of the Lost Adventurer. After about 5 minutes, the player will complete the first section and prepare to move on to the next level. Only then does it dawn on the player, they've just completed the entire DLC. Look, nobody expected Tomb of the Lost Adventurer to be as long as the main campaign, but come on, could you not stretch it out for at least an hour? Anyone who had the misfortune of pre-ordering Tomb Raider just to obtain this minuscule DLC felt pretty burned, and rightfully so. Number 6. Sign up for a newsletter, Sonic Frontiers. Although Sonic the Hedgehog is iconic for bashing badniks with his spiny body and his too cool for school attitude, the Sega mascot is best known for his super speed. Because his sneakers endow him with his hyper agility and swiftness, they've become as iconic as the Blue Blur himself. For Sonic Adventures 2, the developers decided to change things up by swapping his classic Scarlet sneakers for soap-branded shoes. Even though Sonic went back to trademark treads soon after, many gamers enjoyed zooming through corkscrew loops and grinding rails in the soap footwear, and hoped we'd see the shoes again. Luckily, the soaps made a comeback in Sonic Frontiers as DLC. Better still, you didn't have to pay for them. By subscribing to the Sonic newsletter, you'd be given a code to access the beauties. But there's a catch. If you didn't subscribe before January 31st, the offer was gone. So if you were interested in the deal but didn't know about it until now, you missed your chance. Sega is planning further updates this year, including extra challenges and playable characters, so we're hoping the soap shoes will become available again in the future. Number 5. Pay to reverse DLC, Dead or Alive 6. Nowadays, microtransactions feel like a necessary evil. They're certainly not a popular feature, but a lot of companies do rely on them to stay afloat. But Dead or Alive 6 doesn't even try and hide how manipulative their microtransactions are. If you want to purchase all the extra content in one go, it'll set you back $90. Because most of this material consists of cosmetic features like costumes and hair color, most gamers thought it was more sensible to buy them individually, with premium tickets each costing $1. However, paying customers quickly realized how expensive this decision was. When the game was released, you had to trade a ticket for each hair color for every character. Because the 31 characters each have 16 hair color options, this was gonna get very expensive very quickly. But it gets worse. Not only do you have to pay for each hair color separately, you have to pay to deselect it. This means you have to spend real money to rebuy a hair color even if you already own it. This ridiculous setup generated such a controversy, Koei Tecmo changed the whole setup and refunded players who used the tickets. Number 4. Pay for awful karaoke. YAKUZA Like a Dragon. If you want to take a break from busting skulls and hitting people with bikes in a Yakuza game, you can always try out the karaoke. It may have seemed like a gimmick when introduced in Yakuza 3, but these interactive sing-alongs quickly became a staple in the series. Also, watching ruthless thugs like Goro Majima whizzing around in roller skates while singing 24-Hour Cinderella never gets old. So when Yakuza Like a Dragon offered a DLC that covered every karaoke song in the series for under $15, it seemed like a reasonable deal. Unfortunately, many players expected that this feature would also let them play the sets. I mean, it's literally called the Karaoke Set DLC. In reality, all this add-on did was let you access these tunes through the jukebox. But at least you can listen to the plethora of awesome melodies, right? Wrong! This jukebox's sound system is so awful, every song grates on your ears. If you still want to listen to this diluted music for some reason, you could only do so in the bar. Once you walk out of the establishment, the music stops. Although DLCs can often be misleading, this particular one feels like a total con. Number 3. Paying for on-disc content. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Nowadays, pretty much every modern title has a bunch of playable combatants locked away in DLC. Depending on the game, you can purchase fighters individually or as a whole pack. It may cost a pretty penny, but the bonus pack should be worth it if it allows you to play as characters you love. But in recent years, there's been an issue in video games that has been increasingly frustrating to players, and that's on-disc DLC. In situations like this, the expansion is already in the game, meaning the purchase doesn't download anything. Instead, it lets you access the features that were already there. Although many games have implemented this technique, Street Fighter Cross Tekken is an infamous example. For the PS Vita port, you had to pay $20 to purchase 12 DLC fighters. Fans had a serious problem with this deal for 2 reasons. Firstly, people who own Street Fighter Cross Tekken on console didn't have to pay for these extra characters. All they had to do was download them from the Vita version. But what's worse is these 12 characters were built into the code, meaning they could have been a part of the original roster to begin with. So why did Capcom expect customers to pay for something they could have had for free? Number 2. Research every DLC package. Watch Dogs. Here's one thing we bet you never thought you'd have to do while trying to get access to video game DLC. Homework. Unfortunately, Watch Dogs made its pre-order bonuses so confusing, gamers had to sit down and research each DLC to get the most appropriate deal. At first, this doesn't sound too inconvenient. Many gamers will have different expansion packs, giving the player the freedom to select the one that suits them best. But Watch Dogs doesn't give you 2 or 3 options to choose from. It gives you 10. So if you wanted the best selection possible, you needed to research the content available on the Special Edition, the Vigilante Edition, the Limited Edition, the Digital Deluxe Edition, the Gold version, the Season Pass, and the others. If this was all too much of a headache to work out and you really enjoyed the game, you might just think, screw it, I'll just get the one that has all the bonuses. Well, here's the problem with that. There's no single expansion that gives you all the additional content. And because some DLCs are very similar, you need to be careful which ones you buy in case you purchase 2 that are almost identical. Seriously, Ubisoft made Watch Dogs DLC so needlessly complicated, you'd need a spreadsheet to ensure you got your money's worth. Number 1. Spend more money than you have. Entropia Universe. The simplest and most common way to access DLC is to pay for it. Although you can pay for an expansion in a singular payment, the real money is in microtransactions. When it only costs a few dollars to purchase a costume or secret weapon, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But little by little, of course, it adds up, and before you know it, you could realize you've accidentally spent hundreds of dollars on virtual content. So what is the most you can spend on a DLC? To answer that question, we must look at Entropia Universe. In Mind Ark's MMORPG, you need to spend real money to purchase items. Although equipment and guns come at a reasonable price, the best upgrades will cost you an arm and a leg. If you want to buy a space station, for example, it'll set you back $300,000. Reminder, that's real money. If you thought no rational person would spend that much on virtual items, you would be right. However, a lot of irrational people did spend a hideous amount of money on this game to obtain things that don't exist outside the virtual world. At this moment, John Jacobs has the Guinness World Record for most expensive virtual world objects sold, since a player purchased his club in Entropia Universe for $635,000. But that still doesn't answer the question on what is the most one can spend on a DLC. Well, if a person theoretically purchased every single thing in Entropia Universe, their final bill would come to a whopping $6 million. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section, what's the dumbest thing you've ever done to unlock a video game DLC? As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.